It's 1992, and Mikhail Gorbachev is giving a speech at Westminster College, not just to the students physically present, but to the nations across the world watching through their televisions. In this speech, he's calling for denuclearization, ending illegal arm exports, enforcing human rights across the globe, and ultimately for world peace. Now, why is he calling for these things? Why is it even important that he's here at this time? Let's get into it. For some context, around 50 years before Mikhail Gorbachev took this stage, the world had just ended the bloodiest war it's ever fought, the Second World War. In blue, we see the Western powers led by the United States. In red, the Soviet Union, which Mikhail Gorbachev would one day lead. This conflict would force the participating countries to militarize, to dedicate more resources, manpower, and scientific research towards military production. It is important to note that during this war, the West and East didn't cooperate based off of any ideological similarities. Rather, they allied almost solely based on their need to defeat a common enemy, seen here in gray. During this time period, new weapons of war were invented and improved upon, one of which being the nuclear bomb. Now, while it wasn't used on any area you see on screen, it was used against Japan in 1945. This would show that war could now not only destroy a country, but civilization itself. With their victory secured, both the United States and the Soviet Union could breathe a sigh of relief. But nothing greater would come from the end of this conflict than the threat of a war between these former allies. He argues that before the 20th century, each of the people groups across the globe wouldn't be that dependent on each other, or one's culture, while it could influence another, ultimately didn't have that much an effect, culturally or in terms of its own development economically. He argues that now the world is so connected and the people groups are so intertwined that there must be a higher level of international organization to maintain peace.
Ladies and gentlemen, all of these problems demand an enhanced level of organization of the international community.
While he wasn't alone in his call for international unity on limiting nuclear arms, it did show meaningful impact on the world stage. In the years following his speech, we can see rapid ratifications on various treaties, including nuclear-free zones, non-proliferations, test bans, and prohibitions. His speech is ultimately a good thing, calling for unity not based on military dominance, but on the willing participants of the international community. I believe an important feature of this speech is both the contents and delivery. What you are watching now is his almost 50-minute speech sped up. Something important to notice is his body language. You'll notice that he isn't expressive with his hand movements, that he doesn't walk back and forth across the stage. He doesn't even crack a smile until the end. The only movements he makes are shifts to his body so he can face everyone in the large crowd. If you read a transcript of this speech, you'd notice that he doesn't even use comedy to lighten the mood. He doesn't use quick whips or even tries to make it about his own personal experiences. He builds his speech by directly telling the audience what the global situation is at the moment, what specifically must be done, and what the dangers of failing at these steps will be. I believe this shows that Mikhail Gorbachev understands the seriousness of what he's talking about, that he respects the intelligence of his audience he's speaking to, that the changes he wishes to make to nuclear weapons, enforcing human rights, and international unity are no laughing matter, that there are real dangers associated with trying to make these changes. Another important feature is that during both the start and end of his speech, he makes a reference to Winston Churchill. In doing so, he calls back to when Churchill called for the same goals as he did, international unity. But, as Mikhail Gorbachev explains, that while the end goals are the same, the means are not. He explains that leaders of the past wanted unity based on force, by military and economic domination. But now, unity is possible through a different process, a new process, through the willing participation of countries in the United Nations. And that is the speech that Mikhail Gorbachev gives at the Westminster College in 1992. We could see that this speech is very important, as during a time of heightened conflict and heightened tensions, one man calls out to the world for international organization and international peace. Thank you.